The Constellation Phoenix takes the ubiquitous multi-crew platform and dolls it up in an attempt to compete in the luxury space. But how does it compare to other luxury fares such as the 600i? I'm Forrester, and in this video I'll be reviewing the Star Citizen ship, the Constellation Phoenix. Star Citizen is currently in alpha testing with the Phoenix as one of the flyable ships. She's described as a multi-crew touring ship with the ability to bring a number of friends along with you. For those who've seen other ship reviews on this channel, you'll recognise the usual format for this video. I've split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs before finally summarising. As usual, I've included timestamps in the video description to help navigate to each part of the review, and considering that over 80% of people who watch these videos aren't yet subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe to be notified of future videos. Part 1. Ship Tour. And primary entry into the Constellation Phoenix is via an elevator below the nose. Just like the other Constellation series, the main deck is split into 4 sections, from Section A at the front to Section D at the rear. The elevator leads up into Section B. Moving ahead into Section A, the primary feature visible at the front of the cockpit are the 3 chairs, the centre chair for the pilot and the 2 co-pilot chairs. There's some component access and notably chairs for each of the turrets, the lower and upper turret. Moving back into Section B, which is for the crew. On the left hand side as you enter, there is crew ablutions, as well as some storage. There's a crew seating area with table, and on the left are some weapons racks and the 4 crew berths, which will double up as escape pods. There's an airlock right at the top. Moving into Section C, entering on the right, is the first cabin berth. And then out to the left is the second. Moving further back, there's a seating area. These seats are a little buggy and hard to sit in, but should offer a very nice, luxurious view. The main feature of this section is the bar area. There are 2 stools for people to sit at, and plenty of room to manoeuvre behind. There's a very bugged out table by the window, and then the main feature behind the aquarium is a little bit of a hot tub type area. There is some component access in here owing to the size of the Constellation, but it's neatly concealed within the padded walls. Finally, there is the main crew bunk. This is a nice double suite. At the rear, there's another 2 component access cupboards, again neatly hidden behind panels. And then at the rear is Section D, which is more of the engineering section. There's some component access, as well as access to the Archimedes snub fighter. And last but not least, moving forward, within Section C there is a hidden elevator which leads down into the cargo bay. The cargo bay is large enough to support multiple rovers such as the Tumbril Cyclone. And finally, the cargo bay can be deployed, leading down to the planet surface and serves as a second entry point. Part 2. Combat Performance. The Constellation Phoenix comes armed by default with 4 gimbaled Omnisky 12 laser cannons controlled by the pilot, which give a considerable forward firing punch. These can be swapped out for fixed size 5 weapons for additional firepower if desired. The end effect is that from the front, the Phoenix is able to put out a considerable amount of laser pain downrange, which tears through smaller ships with only a couple of hits. There are currently 2 turrets, one atop and one beneath, each coming armed with double size 2 weapons, distortion repeaters by default. The word currently is used here with caution, as there is talk at some point there might be a remote turret or point defense turret added. The turret arc is a little suboptimal, precluding having all weapons firing on the same target. The turrets seem to be more optimised towards providing dorsal and ventral coverage, to eliminate as many blind spots as possible. Moreover, the damage output from these turrets is a little on the low side, with 2 size 2 weapons being a little undergunned against some of the potential opponents for the Phoenix. There are 2 deployable missile launchers, armed with a potential for 28 size 1 missiles, but the missiles are incredibly buggy, and actually getting them to fire is very difficult. In terms of protection, the Phoenix carries 2 size 2 shield generators. These offer reasonable protection against smaller targets, but are probably not as strong as a ship of this size the Constellation might benefit from. So not weak, but not strong either. Part 3. Handling and visibility. Starting with visibility from the Constellation, having the cockpit at the front really helps. From the pilot's chair there is fairly good all-round visibility, including to the top, sides and below. There are a few struts, but largely they don't get in the way. Sometimes the heads-up display gets a little blurry, however. It's not unusable, but does make it harder to read the text, which somewhat undermines the purpose of the HUD. So the visibility works quite well for takeoff and landing, with solid views above and below, but it's worth mentioning that when landing, only the rear of the Constellation sits down. That means that the nose is susceptible to a little wobble. In terms of handling, the Phoenix is a fairly heavy ship and handles accordingly. The straight line speed and acceleration is actually fairly reasonable, owing to the heavy engine nacelles at the rear. In atmosphere, you can expect her to handle as a fairly heavy ship, slow to turn and prone to sinking a little, although the Constellation does have toggleable VTOL engines which can help it keep airborne to some extent. In a vacuum, it's largely the same story, with the Constellation carrying some momentum through turns, but not being unduly difficult to fly. It can be a lot of work to precisely point the nose, so having the primary weapons on gimbals does make life easier. And what of the stock quantum drive? Yes, the stock quantum drive is painfully slow and with an awfully long cooldown. But it manages a long range. Even so, that's a bit of a letdown for a ship whose sole purpose is to travel in comfort and style. Part 4. Operating costs. The running costs of the Constellation Phoenix tend to run into the mid-hundreds or low thousands across repair, rearming and refueling during regular usage. Thankfully, the Phoenix can more than cover those costs by running any kind of contract mission out there. The combat missions, including the high payout claim jumper missions, are all feasible and can be done solo or with friends in turrets. There is plentiful internal space for boxes for delivery missions, and the 93 cargo units of storage can be used to run cargo too. So, all in all, lots of options to cover costs. Part 5. The verdict. There's a lot going for the Constellation Phoenix that's all bundled in together. Firstly, it comes with an Archimedes snub fighter dutifully bolted to the rear, as well as a complimentary Ursa rover. There are also a considerable number of beds, with the 4 crew bunks plus additional berths for passengers, all of these helping to future-proof the Phoenix into a versatile platform. At time of recording, there are some awkward bugs, namely, passenger seats are largely unusable, there's a disastrous table all warped together, and trying to fire missiles is difficult to say the least. But really the big challenge comes at the price. At $350 or 5.7 million Alpha UEC, the Constellation Phoenix sits in a difficult price point. That's quite a lot more expensive than the base model Constellation Andromeda, which offers much of the same functionality, which is liable to leave prospective purchasers wondering whether it's worth the upgrade. And for all that one section is nicely fitted out, this still feels like a dolled up Constellation. What that means is that the ship is still at the heart the old, same space truck. And you're always conscious of that. Contrast that to the 600i, which is much larger and more expensive again, but is clearly all around a luxury affair from the ground up, whereas the luxury element to the Phoenix feels like more of an afterthought. So is it worth it? The Constellation Phoenix is a solid performing ship in most of the categories here, but no, I don't think it is. For anyone looking for something a little more unique and luxury, the 600i would be a more appropriate choice, albeit for a slightly higher price point. But isn't that the point in luxury? And for somebody looking for the functionality that a Constellation offers, honestly, save the difference or invest in some upgrades or alternatives. It's a begrudging verdict for me because there's a lot to like about the Constellation Phoenix. I'm expecting a lot of love for her in the comments. Let me know why you like it, how you use it, or whether you agree with the verdict in the comments. If you found this review helpful, you may also be interested in my review of the Origin 600i. Please also subscribe if you'd like to see future Star Citizen content, and check out the video description for details of my active Star Citizen organisation. Thank you for watching.